I want to thank you tonight for joining us for this live virtual event for Care for Pastors. Some of you watching this are very familiar with Care for Pastors. You have known us, you've prayed for us, you've supported us through the years. Some of you watching this, hopefully, this is your first experience, or maybe you know very little about Care for Pastors. But tonight, we want to bring you into an actual staff meeting of Care for Pastors. Before that, we want to give you a little bit of the creation story. Now, I want to be perfectly honest and upfront. This is a fundraising event, so there will be an ask. I hope that's okay, because as nonprofits, that's the only way we're able to do what we do, and that's care for pastoral families, is by the faithful support of our donors. But let's talk a little bit about the creation story. Rita, why don't you start?
Well, I never will forget that first church. I was 22, I think, and you were 25, ripe old ages. And in that very first business meeting, a deacon stood up and said to you, "Preacher, the problem with you is you don't have enough stripes on your back, and it's up to us to put some on you." I was like, oh my goodness, what have we gotten into? I thought God has called us into ministry, and everything's just going to be wonderful. And there we were, and I did not know what to do.
Well, through the years, we've experienced a lot of that. If you'll remember, after about 8.5 years of that, I was ready to walk away from ministry. I'm done with this. Enough is enough. But I'm thankful that God, in His great sovereignty, loved us enough that He put us in an environment where we could heal, because what we found is hurt people, but healed people, heal people. And I'll never be able to thank those singles, the single adult ministry that God put us in, because as we loved them unconditionally, they loved us unconditionally right back. And it was a healing experience in preparation for what we get to do today.
Yes, it was. And another thing that God used that singles ministry for, at that point, God had not blessed us with children, and we just could not understand because the doctors couldn't give us any reason. And that singles ministry brought healing to our hearts in that way as well, because I realized I could minister to those single young ladies in ways that I couldn't have had I had my desires, because many of them had desires to be married, and that wasn't what God had for them at that time. So God used that singles ministry to bring lots of healing to us.
It was also in that period of ministering to singles that I'll never forget that retreat that we went on to Myrtle Beach. And it was there, I could almost take you to the exact spot where God birthed in my heart the vision of Care for Pastors, of how that one day we would be a part of a ministry that would be a safe place for pastors, because it wasn't very long in ministry that I learned there are very few safe places. And that was nearly 30 years ago that God birthed the vision and mission of Care for Pastors in my heart. And to see how God has worked in us, and He's worked in our staff, and He's worked in the hearts of literally thousands of pastoral families. It's just overwhelming.
It is. And I would have given anything back when we were 22 and 25 to have had a ministry like this, because we were just kind of trial and error. And I'm like, man, if we would have had something like this, for someone to have come alongside of us and been that confidant and that pastor's ally for us, wow, what a difference it could have made. But I'm so thankful that God saw us through all of those trials.
One of the things that we learned in all of those trials is that God, in His great creativity, can and does and has used a lot of pain and a lot of difficulty to allow us to put into practice that 2 Corinthians 1 principle, that God is a God of all comfort, who comforts us so that we can offer comfort to others from the comfort we have received. So I think of 43 years of ministry and marriage, the things that God has entrusted us with, so that we can sit down with a pastoral family and we can say, we understand. We understand pain. We understand grief. We understand betrayal, because God has entrusted a lot of that to us so that we can be effective in what we're doing today with Care for Pastors.
It's very true. And I'm thankful for that. I wouldn't want to go back through some of those trials, but I'm thankful that He allowed us to grow through them and not just go through them, or that He didn't allow us to become bitter. I never will forget we call the last graduate course that we had to take before stepping into Care for Pastors full time. It was a very difficult time, and you'll share a little bit about that, what we call our hostile takeover attempt. It was during that time that it was so amazing to see how God, on the days that you were down and ready to quit and walk away, I was ready to stay and fight, and vice versa. He never let us both be down on the same day. And I'm so thankful He allowed us to stay and to see that ministry become healthy before we were released to come and do Care for Pastors.
7 years into a church plant, a group decided that it was time for us to leave the church. And it was brutal, it was hard, it was the most difficult thing that I've ever gone through. But once again, God, in His great creativity, is able to use those things which the enemy may mean for evil and destruction. And if we will surrender to that principle that God is and does work all things for our good and well-being, if we'll allow Him to. It was during that time of feelings of betrayal that God just genuinely said, they're not doing this to you, I'm doing this for you. And then I didn't get it, but it was after we went through that I began to realize He has entrusted us with this so that we will be able to get to do what we do today. And so I thank Him for it. I thank Him for it.
That was a pruning, and I've heard you say many times, God is the master gardener, and there were branches cut away that we would have never cut away. But even though pruning is ugly and painful, there was beautiful fruit that was brought out of it, and I'm thankful for that. But I never will forget, in January of 2011, now you're going to make me start crying, when we stepped aside from the ministry. We had a very vibrant women's ministry, and I was like, well, what am I going to do? I don't have a women's ministry. Well, God has a sense of humor. Here we are, 10 and a half years into Care for Pastors full time, and I've got a women's ministry way beyond anything I could have ever imagined, with pastors' wives, over 2,500 pastors' wives in a private Facebook group that I get to, along with help of many other ladies, get the opportunity to come alongside and share with them some of the things that God has brought us through and minister to them in ways that I never, ever, ever expected.
And I never expected for our reach to go beyond Baptist. It's been amazing, this 10 and a half years of how God has expanded our territories to a multi-denominational ministry. Care for Pastors is about kingdom building, not denomination building. And we are so thankful that God has opened those doors in ways that we could have never opened, but God has clearly opened them, giving us the opportunity of ministering to so many pastoral families, regardless of denomination, regardless of their gender. And so with that in mind, there is more to Care for Pastors than just Ron and Rodetta. So we want to take you live to one of our staff meetings and meet our staff and find out a little bit more about Care for Pastors.
And we couldn't do this without that team and without all the volunteers that we have helping us here at Care for Pastors, as well as our faithful donors. And you'll see a panoramic view of our office here in a little bit. Even our office is God's blessings. We have been blessed with so many things, furniture-wise, but from churches and from individuals and from just different businesses. And we're just so grateful for what God has done in these 10 and a half years.
So we have been so blessed. We'll give you an opportunity to see our offices and join us in our staff meeting and get better acquainted with the staff of Care for Pastors.
Thank you again for joining us this evening for our live event. And we're so excited for you to join us at a staff meeting because we want you to meet all of our awesome team as they share with you what they do here at Care for Pastors. So as we get into our meeting, we will start with Patti Johnson as she introduces herself.
Hi, I'm Patti Johnson. I came to Care for Pastors in 2011 when we were dealing with a church conflict. I started volunteering with the Confidant through local activities and the private Facebook page, and then I became a true advocate for the ministry. In 2020, I started a part-time staff as Confidant coordinator and admin administrator to Rodetta. The staff works as a team, so I'm always available for whatever needs pop up. My husband and I also fill a role of being host to at the Ephesians House, welcoming our pastors and pastoral couples as they enter their week of pastoral counseling at Care for Pastors.
So, Patti, what's it really like being a part of the Care for Pastors team?
Well, that's easy to answer. Because we came here for counseling, we got to see the true heart of what Care for Pastors is. We felt safe, we felt validated, we felt that we belonged here. And so it was a natural transition to feel that way being a part of Care for Pastors. When I come in here to the office, it feels like I'm home, it feels like I'm safe, it feels like I have a purpose, and that we get to just really influence whatever God brings across our path.
Well, we're glad you're a part of the team.
Thank you.
So Patti, if you would, share with us a little about our Better Together retreats for pastors' wives, because we are better together.
Absolutely. One of the highlights of our year is doing our annual retreat for our pastors' wives. And when we first started this 5 years ago, we knew what we wanted it to be, but we absolutely wanted to fulfill what the ladies needed. And so we went right to them, to our local pastors' wives, to our Facebook group, our Confidant group, and we asked them what they wanted. And they were very, very intent on knowing what they wanted, and they wanted it to be small. They wanted it to be not overscheduled, and they absolutely wanted to have connection with other pastors' wives. One of the things that we had had as a dream of ours to incorporate was to have it at, dare I say, the most elegant place that we could afford for them. Because one of the things that we found out about pastors' wives, having experienced it ourselves, is that we usually come last and we don't expect much. So we wanted to provide that for them. And we have had wonderful donors underwrite some of it so that we could make it affordable. So we have done 5 in the Orlando area in the past 5 years. This will be our 5th year. And one of the things that we just absolutely love about it is that it is multi-generational. It is multi-denominational. It is all pastors' wives of different roles of their husbands, from senior pastor, church planning pastor, associate, executive, worship pastor, youth pastor. We all just come together. We do our best to keep it to 30 ladies, because we found that that's the number that really allows us the connection time. And I just have to, I have a wonderful memory from our first gathering, is because a lot of our ladies come from the Facebook group. We follow each other's lives. And one of our ladies had experienced a terrible flood in their town. And she lived in a FEMA trailer for the better part of that year. And we had ministered to her through the group, and she was one that was able to come to the retreat. And at the dinner table, we all realized that Sherry was who we had gotten to know as the FEMA girl. And it was just such a fun connection that our hearts were knitted long before we sat down for a meal together for that weekend. And so the memories just grow every year. This year, we're adding a second one to our schedule. Next year, for the spring, we're going to be going to Louisville, Kentucky. So this is our first out of state. Our ladies have been asking for that. And again, we went to them and said, where would you like us to be? And so we're just very excited about the one that comes up in October and the one next spring in Louisville, Kentucky. So it's just been a wonderful blessing to be part of it And as we always say, we minister to our tribe, and our tribe ministers to us.
And so now you know why I said earlier when we were talking about the creation story of my fear of what was I going to do here at Care for Pastors. I'm so thankful for Patti and Christy and another pastor's wife that helps us with the confidant. And we can do that 2 Corinthians principle where we can offer them comfort from the comfort that we have received. And I am just thrilled with the women's ministry that God has given me that's way beyond anything I could have ever imagined.
Okay, next we have Christy. You're up.
I'm Christy Watson. I've been here at Care for Pastors for 3 years. And I'm actually the receptionist, the first face that people see when they come through the door. My title here is Administrative Assistant. And I came to know about Care for Pastors through our Facebook group, The Confidant, which is exclusively for pastors' wives. And I joined that group about 5 years ago. And I'd actually like to share with you the first post that I ever wrote in the group, in the Facebook group. It says, "What I would give for some Jesus time with a close friend. Oh, to pour my heart and fears and dreams out to someone I could trust without the fear of being judged, talked about, or misunderstood. I miss my trusting social self. I miss Jesus talks with close friends. I miss laughing and being full of God. Now it's Jesus and me working it out. He is enough. He's more than enough. Yet I'm not content. I'm lonely. I'm tired. I'm struggling. Teach me your ways, O God. Transform me. Make me whole. Give me a purpose. Show me the direction I need to go. Change my attitude. Give me peace of mind. My happiness comes when I'm full of and being used by you, God. Do what you have to do, but please make it quick. Amen." And I poured my heart out in that post. And that's where I was at the time. I was lonely. I was struggling. My husband's a pastor, and it was a very dry season in our ministry. And I actually connected with Rodetta and shared with her some of the struggles that I was dealing with, and my husband as well. And they offered to meet with my husband and I, and Ron ministered to my husband. And he says that was a turning point for him because we were both just in a season of discouragement, and we didn't know the next step to take. But through that meeting with Ron and Rodetta that day, my husband and I both received direction, encouragement, and support. And I'm so thankful that we said yes to that luncheon.
Christy, that's very powerful. This ministry's already ministered to you and your husband. Tell us what you do with the Confidant.
The Confidant. Well, the Confidant is near and dear to my heart, as well as Rodetta and Patti's. With us being the admins over the group, we watch over it. We try to keep it a safe place for pastors' wives. We actually have lots of members. We have 2,500 members, over 2,500 members in the group. And over 50 countries are represented in the group. And actually, we have a pastor's wife, at least one from every state in the United States. The group is a place where we can share our struggles, our fears, our problems, and we get understanding from other pastors' wives. And honestly, unless you're a pastor's wife, you really don't understand. And it's nothing personal, it's just the role that we have, the title that we share. And being connected in the group, we can help support and encourage one another. And that's what the group is about, is encouraging one another. And I actually have a few posts from the group I'd like to share. One of our pastor's wives shares, "I have never felt so lonely since entering ministry. So many people who know who you are, but no one knows truly who you are deep down, and no one to share your pain with. It's so hard. How do you cope?" I'd say the majority of our pastors' wives have experienced or are experiencing loneliness. It's not easy being a pastor's wife. It's not easy to find connections with others. But here in the Confidant, in our pastor's wife group, we do support one another and even have friendships where we can bond and actually make that connection. Another wife says, "I just want to say that I'm so thankful for this group. Up until now, I've been lurking, but it has been so helpful to see so many prayer requests that I could have written myself. It's just nice to know we are not alone in our struggles and in our needs. And our wives appreciate the group. I appreciate the group where we can be ourselves. There's not too many places where we can do that. But in this group, it's safe and we can be ourselves. And I'm very grateful for that.
So next is Kathy. Of all of our staff members, the one that we had to pay to get on camera, not really, but she does not like to be on camera or talk on camera, but she's our financial director. And she stays in her office a lot. So for her to be on camera is a little bit of a stretch. But Kathy, you are a blessing to us in so many ways. Share what you do now that I have embarrassed you.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Kathy Rivers, and yes, I've been involved with Care for Pastors since almost the beginning. When Ron and Rodetta birthed Care for Pastors. I first met Ron and Rodetta in 2003, December. And to meet a couple, to be involved in the church that showed warmth and welcomed everyone that came through that door, and also never forgot your name, was very amazing to me. And when Care for Pastors, which was formerly You Are Worthy, started with the retreats for hurting pastors, my husband and I got involved. And he, being a PK, he knew what his dad had gone through going in the church life. So we were involved in that. And then I started volunteering with Care for Pastors and answering the phone. I was quite content coming in a couple of days. And I'm a project person, and they asked me if I would take over financial assistant. In 2017 was when I actually became employed with Care for Pastors. And as Ron would say, that I will balance all QuickBooks till the penny. And I will stay in my office all day until I find that penny. Because to me, anytime you're dealing with money in nonprofit world, is very, very, you have to be sincere about it and enjoy what you do. And I enjoy working for Care for Pastors and helping them.
For those of you who are watching, I can assure you every penny you give, not every dollar, but every penny you give is watched over diligently by this woman. So some of you watching may not be familiar with ECFA, which is just a very important part of nonprofits. Kathy, would you share with those who are watching exactly what ECFA is?
ECFA is the Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability. And once you get certified with them, you have to get recertified with them annually. And you have to present all of your financial records that are filed with your 990 and also your annual financial statements with IRS. And in addition with ECFA, we also have to file annually our solicitation of contribution registration through the state of Florida. We also have to file, like I said, the income tax exemption. We might be a nonprofit, and people get that a little confused as far as being exempt from taxes, but you still have to file with the IRS, and you have to make sure that everything is balanced with that. Another thing we have to do is dealing with workers' compensation. We have an annual mail audit that is very in detail, and it too deals with our finances, the income, the going out, and additional, other than making sure that annual or monthly and even weekly, that our QuickBooks is reconciled with our donor database, that what is in the bank or what gets deposited in the bank is the same as what is in our donor base for each 30 days.
So as a nonprofit, we are committed to the highest level of accountability and and integrity possible. And Kathy will make sure that that takes place. And next we have Jared. Jared, you're up.
Awesome. Well, my name is Jared Simons, and I am the Marketing and Media Director for Care for Pastors. And I've been actually with Care for Pastors 7 years as of this year, actually. In my role, pretty much to sum it up in a nutshell, I help strategize and put together all of the marketing communications for Care for Pastors. Everything from our email to our social media, all the way up to our website, direct mailings that we do to all of our donors. I put all of those things together. And then I also, obviously, I help design and manage the online presence through our social media website and our weekly blog.
So Jared, I have a question. It's a very pointed question. Why in the world does it take you so long to do everything you do?
It's a good question, Ron. Well, I have to say, one of the things that I really believe in about this ministry is I believe that if we are offering the highest level of care for pastors and their families, and we want pastors to come away from this ministry having felt that they're strong going back into ministry, that they are able to thrive. I believe in, not just from obviously the standpoint of our counseling, but from how we present ourselves online and how we present ourselves in the way we market Care for Pastors. And I believe in doing that at the highest level. For example, with the website and with our social media, everything that we put out as far as our resources, everything has to reflect that we have a passion and that we truly do care for pastors and want to be that safe place for them and their families to turn. So I just believe that, we want to do everything at the highest level possible. And I'm committed to doing that in this role. So
Jared, I already knew the answer to that question, but I wanted those of you watching to hear that, because Jared is committed to offering in our social media and our networking everything that goes out digitally to reflect the same level of care that we offer one-on-one with pastoral families. So thank you, Jared.
Thank you, Ron.
Okay, Chrissy, you're up. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Care for Pastors?
My name is Christy Lane Garland, and I am the Pastor's Kids Ministry Director and Counselor here at Care for Pastors. And I've been here for over 2 years now. And when we needed it the most, Care for Pastors ministered to my life and to the lives of my 2 children. So when Care for Pastors asked me to be a part of the team, I jumped at the opportunity. I grew up in ministry. I am still a pastor's kid, so I absolutely love what I get to do here. But when my husband suddenly passed away in 2019, it was Care for Pastors who brought me in, who loved me. And so I'm so thankful just to be able to minister to families like Care for Pastors has ministered to me. And since 2019, we've been able to create and develop this incredible ministry to pastoral families and specifically to pastors' kids. And we have personally reached 215 pastors' kids since we began in 2019. And so many more through our Facebook groups, through our Instagram pages. So we offer individual counseling as well as support groups every month for pastors' kids ages 12 to 25. We have private Facebook groups where pastors' kids can talk to other pastors' kids, not feel so alone. And we also have an Instagram page and a public Facebook page. So this kind of gives out content to encourage pastoral families to help these pastors' kids and to relate to them and what they're experiencing. And I would just like to share a few testimonies of some lives that have really been impacted by the ministry, pastorskids.org. And one is, she said, when my parents were getting a divorce, Pastor's Kids was my only safe place. I wanted to take my life several times, but I knew I had you as a resource. And I could go to you, and I'm doing so much better now, and my parents are actually not getting a divorce. Another one said, I've been able to work through so many issues through the counseling that pk.org provides. I have found that I am less anxious and depressed since beginning individual counseling through pastorskids.org. Thank you for your ministry, not only to me, but to my entire family. And a third person said, this ministry has given me a place to feel less alone. It has encouraged me to start my own blog for other pastors' kids, to know that the things that they struggle with don't have to be hidden. Thank you for giving me the courage to be more open and more understanding of my own personal experiences. And that's what we get to do every day, and I love it.
So, Christy, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you a very personal question that you have shared with Rodetta and I. You said being raised in the church, you felt like you grew up on the front pew. Share with us what that was like.
Yes, so growing up as a pastor's kid, we had our reserved seat on the front 2 rows. It would be the front row or the second row. And as a pastor's kid, I knew that that's where we sat, was in the front, not only to support my dad who was preaching, but also it was our place to show that we were this pastor's family that did things correct and behaved well and were there every Sunday. And then I went to seminary and I married a pastor, and that stayed the same, always on the front row or the second row, or I was leading from the stage or sharing from the stage. And I remember when that significantly changed. And when my husband struggled with depression, anxiety, mental illness, and that led to an opioid addiction. And he struggled with all of that while being a pastor. And he thrived as a pastor for years, but eventually it took a toll on him and he fell. He fell from that spot, and therefore we as a family fell from the spot of the front row. And my husband went to rehab. He resigned from his pastorate position, went to rehab. And I remember thinking the church was the last place I wanted to go, but the first place I needed to run to. So I took my 4-month-old babies and we went to the same church that he had just resigned from, where I was on the second row. And I ended up sitting in the back row because I felt like that's the only place I belonged. That's what a lot of the people in the church made me feel like. I had people actually tell me, it's probably not a good idea you're here. But my babies needed to be in that church. And even on the back row, my babies needed to be there, and I needed to be there. And now I say it's on the back row that I really understood the grace of Christ. And I understood the gospel. It wasn't when I was preaching or leading worship or adoring my husband while he was preaching or my father. It was when I was a nobody and I was a leper on the back row that Jesus met me. And I understood the grace that I had taught about for so many years. I was living in it. And it was shameful. It felt shameful. And for a while, I actually felt like I wasn't even welcomed in the church. Like I was laying on the steps by the door, begging to come in. But I went to church and I continued going to church because I believed the gospel was for me. And I believed the gospel was for me and my husband as we served as pastor and a pastor's wife at the church. And I believed it was for me and my babies on that back row.
Okay. One of the things that you're going to hear from all of our staff is we understand church. We understand the imperfectness of members in the church. And that's what makes us uniquely suited to come alongside those who are hurting in pastoral ministry. Thank you, Chrissy. Well, next is our newest employee, Chris. You're up.
My name is Chris Larson, and I'm a pastoral counselor coach here at Care for Pastors. I have been here now a whopping 9 months. I first heard about Care for Pastors when Ron came to speak at the church where I was on staff. And when he spoke and when he told me what he did, it struck a nail in my heart because I had been there. At a previous church where I was senior pastor, I felt alone. I was drowning in my ministry. There was a lot of confusion. The church was basically falling apart, and I had nowhere to turn. What I found from other places was a lot of platitudes and, sad to say, empty promises. And so when I met Ron, it was a joy to hear that a ministry like Care for Pastors existed, where pastors and their families could meet and come in a safe environment and get help.
So, Chris, in the 9 months that you have been here, have there been any surprises?
I think one of the surprises that I've encountered is the variety of issues that pastors and their families, their wives bring to the table. But frequently it boils down to the same issue. And we've heard it spoken of a lot around this table. And again, it means a lot to me personally, and that is the loneliness. One of the first questions I ask pastors and their wives when we have a counseling time is there anyone in your church you can share these things with? And sad to say, all too often the answer is no, that they're alone and there is just no one that they can turn to. But I have to say that to me, one of the highest compliments that I have received during my time doing this ministry is I was counseling with a couple, a pastor and his wife. It was about our third session. And all of a sudden, the wife turned to her husband and said, "He's a pastor. That's what we've been needing, is a pastor to talk to." And that's what we do. And that is our joy, and that is my privilege to be involved in Care for Pastors.
Well, our next staff person is our senior staff member in age. Robert, introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Thank you.
And by the way, I hope you can sense in our staff meetings, we like to have fun, okay? So I say that with the highest regard.
Thank you. My name is Robert White, and I am a pastoral counselor coach with Care for Pastors. I came to Care for Pastors in October of 2016, so I've been with them for 5 years. My wife and I had been supporters of Care for Pastors long before I ever came to join the staff. And I knew of the ministry and its impact in the lives of pastors and their families. And I had referred a number of friends to Care for Pastors because I knew they would be taken care of. They would be counseled and supported and encouraged. Where does a pastor turn when he and his family are in crisis? Where do they go for support, encouragement, counsel, coaching? Where do they get the kind of encouragement and prayer that they need? How do they get biblically based, Christ-centered, grace-driven counseling? How do they get that? Well, Care for Pastors provided that. My wife and I knew that, and so we supported them for many years. And then one day, Ron called me and said, "We'd like for you to join the staff here at Care for Pastors." And I said, "Well, I need to talk to my wife about that." And so I went to Kay and I said, "Honey, Ron Cook just called me and asked me to join the staff at Care for Pastors." And she looked me right in the eye and said, "You were made for this." And that had been my heart for a number of years. And so I was thrilled to be able to join the staff and be part of caring for pastors. Now, most of our counseling is virtual counseling. About 80% of what we do takes place online, Zoom calls and FaceTime, and we offer the same level of care. Sometimes we have clients that live close enough to come to our headquarters here in Leesburg, and they receive that same level of care. The support and encouragement and help and understanding that they receive here, they can't receive anyplace else. This is the safe place where they can turn and know they're going to be understood. They're not going to be condemned or judged. They're going to be loved, accepted, understood, and supported. They're going to be given the guidance that they so much need. And so our role has been to hold in front of them the grace and the truth of the Lord Jesus Christ. And it's been a great joy to be part of this ministry.
So, Robert, you've been in ministry many years. How have you seen ministry change from when you began till now?
Well, one of the things that's become really evident is the impact of COVID-19 on pastoral ministry. And so many of the pastors that we talk to, the first thing that comes out of their mouths is, I'm totally exhausted and I have no idea what to do. And we are offering to them the kind of counsel and support that they need. And one of the things that we did several years back was we formed the Pastor's Ally, which is a private Facebook group for pastors only. And these pastors, this Facebook group, it provides for them a place where they can unload the challenges, the frustrations, the heartache of ministry, and know that they're going to be understood. They're going to be supported and encouraged, and they're going to be given the kind of wise counsel that is so much needed. And so our Pastor's Ally has grown, and we have a number of pastors all over the country, even in foreign countries, who've reached out to us, and they find that safe place on the Pastor's Ally. So I would say one of the biggest challenges has been COVID and its impact on the church. And the leadership of pastors has been questioned and challenged in ways that nobody could have imagined.
Everyone that you've heard from understands the pain, the difficulty, the struggles of ministry. A lot of you that are watching this, that are, again, very familiar with Care for Pastors, and some this is your first exposure to Care for Pastors. You know these are unparalleled times. As individuals, as families, as the church. In our lifetime, we have never gone through a time such as we have in the last 2 years. It's affected every aspect of society. So much division, so much controversy, so much offense. And we're seeing it in our churches. We're seeing it in our nation. Our nation is so divided. If there was ever a time that the church needed to be the church, it's now. If there was ever a time that pastoral families needed encouragement, it's now. That's what we get to do every day. Whether it's a submission on the Facebook or an email or a call, we get to come alongside of pastors and their wives and their kids, offering them a safe place of encouragement. And I say it over and over and over, and it's not just words. We are so thankful that we get to do what we do. I want to read you one submission that just came in a few days ago. It was a public submission to a blog that was written. And this is what it says. Our 15-year-old son was killed in a car accident, riding to youth group with two boys. Two boys that only came because of our son's influence in their lives. Less than 4 months after his death, I was asked to leave by the eldership because, in their words, if you stay, this will be a dark cloud that will hover over our church. We did leave. And the emotional damage of all these dramatic changes made, stacked on the death of our son, what it has done to my wife still angers me to this day. I gave 13 years of my life to that place. When I needed them the most, they discarded my family. I get her feelings in this blog. The father-in-law wrote this: "We saw the destruction that the church did to our daughter, your wife, losing a son, such a powerful young man. She will never be the same. To think that that same church that drove a knife into her heart deeper and deeper, it still angers me and makes me so sad. My continued prayers for you and your family and our grandchildren." We don't see that level of submission every day, but we see that level of submission and pain and difficulty far too often. We could not do what we do without folks supporting the ministry. I shared with you in the beginning of this video that this will be an informational video. You've got to meet our staff. You've heard their background, their passion, and what they do. We could not do what we do without the financial support. And as I shared with you, this is an ask. This is a financial ask. Because every dollar that comes in is used to support what you've heard today around the staff meeting. We are committed to doing it the highest level possible because that's what pastors and their wives and their kids deserve. So I want to encourage you, consider supporting Care for Pastors. We need your prayers. We're on the front line. We are committed to marching into the devil's camp and claiming and reclaiming what he's stolen. We are committed to doing whatever it takes to love, to encourage pastoral families. Not just the pastor, not just the wife, but the entire family. We're committed to doing that, and we're going to do it. Help us continue doing it at the highest level possible. We're growing. The ministry is about to expand in areas that we'll be letting you know. But what you have heard around the table today is just the beginning. It's just the beginning of us stewarding the vision of having pastoral families ministered to, of Care for Pastors being one of the preeminent providers of pastoral care in the nation. That's our commitment. That was the vision that God birthed in my heart over 30 years ago. It's gone from what could be to what should be. We are now in that area that it must be. And so I'm unapologetically asking you to support this ministry. Making a one-time gift or a financial gift, making Care for Pastors a part of your legacy giving, a part of your estate planning. There may be stock that you want to give. We'll take anything that's of value, except your children or spouses or anything. But we need you. Partner with us as we care for pastoral families. Thank you for taking the time to hear about Care for Pastors. Thank you for allowing me to share my heart. These are tough times. We're going to stand in the gap. Stand with us and be blessed because of it. Thank you.